It started with a whisper that wasn't meant for me. "Don't draw attention this time," my mother murmured, her voice sharp beneath the sweetness. The words slid across the church aisle like cold metal. They told me to stay quiet for my perfect sister's sake. But silence has its own voice. "Listen closely. You won't believe what happened next." I stood near the floral arch, arranging petals that didn't belong to me, pretending my hands weren't shaking. My sister, Emily, was radiant in her ivory rehearsal dress, laughing, glowing, adored. The light seemed to follow her everywhere the way it never followed me. I turned slightly, catching my mother's reflection in the mirror beside the altar. Her lips pressed thin, eyes locked on me as if I were a child who might spill wine on the carpet. My father stood a few feet away, talking proudly about his daughter, though he didn't mean me. He never did. The rehearsal buzzed with chatter and perfume. Bridesmaids whispered about centerpieces. The organ hummed quietly in the background. I stood still like an extra in someone else's movie. "Patricia," my sister called, smiling wide. "Could you move those candles to the back? They're too close to my aisle shot." I nodded and obeyed like I always did. As I lifted the candles, wax dripped onto my fingers, hot enough to sting. I didn't flinch. Pain was familiar. When I set them down, Emily leaned closer and whispered, "I really appreciate you being civil this time. Mom says it means a lot." Civil, that word sank deep past my ribs. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Anything for the family," I said softly. She grinned, satisfied, already turning away. And in that moment, I knew she never noticed the small notepad tucked inside my purse. The one where I'd written every deposit, every vendor's number, every contract detail in my name. The clock above the church door ticked loudly. 3:32 in the afternoon. I remember it because the light through the stained glass made everything gold and fake, like happiness sold in pieces. The coordinator, a young woman with too much perfume, asked, "Who's handling the final payments again?" "Patricia is," Emily answered without hesitation. "She's organized, aren't you?" I nodded. Organized. Obedient. Invisible. While they rehearsed their smiles and vows, I walked out to the hallway to breathe. The air smelled of lilies and floor polish. My reflection stared back from the glass door. Older, quieter, but sharper than I used to be. From the courtyard, I could see my parents laughing with Emily's fiancé. My mother touched his arm as if he were her own son. She had never looked at my husband that way. Not once. Not even when he tried to greet her at my wedding 3 years ago. One she and my father skipped because I chose the wrong man. I still remember that day. I waited until sunset, dressed in white, holding a bouquet that never got thrown. They said later, it was better not to embarrass the family. Now here I was, folding their napkins and paying for their princess's big day. Inside, the rehearsal paused. Emily was frowning at her bouquet. "These roses look wilted," she said sharply. "Patricia, did you confirm the florist?" "I did," I said. "They'll replace everything before Saturday." Her sigh was heavy. "Just make sure they do. I don't want anything less than perfect." I nodded again. She didn't notice the way I lingered on that word. Perfect. The choir started humming again and I took my seat in the back pew. From there I could watch everything. The laughter, the glances, the pride. I could also hear the things they didn't mean for me to hear. "She's calmer than I expected," my mother whispered. "Maybe she's finally changed." My father chuckled. "She had to. No one wants another scene." "Thank God she knows her place," Emily added quietly. My place. Something inside me shifted then. Not like an explosion, more like a lock clicking open after years of rust. I didn't react. I simply opened my planner, checked a few figures, and underlined one word beside the florist's name. Confirmed. But in my head it already meant controlled. Later, as the rehearsal ended, my mother approached me with that brittle smile she reserved for family photos. "You've done well, Patricia. Emily really appreciates your help." "Does she?" I asked gently. "Of course. And we do too. After all, this wedding is very important. Everyone from town will be there. We can't afford misunderstandings." I tilted my head. "You mean like when you didn't come to mine?" Her smile faltered. "That's in the past. Let's not dwell on things that divide us." "Of course," I said and stepped aside so she could pass. As she walked away, I could hear her whisper to my father, "She still takes everything so personally." I wanted to laugh. If only they knew how impersonal I'd become. By evening, the sky over town was tinted orange. I loaded boxes of decor into my car while Emily and her fiancé drove off in their spotless SUV. He waved at me through the window. An effortless, perfect wave. When they disappeared down the street, I leaned against my car and exhaled slowly. The breeze carried the faint smell of rain and roses. I closed my eyes and pictured my wedding day again. The empty chairs, the unanswered calls, the pitying faces of guests asking, "Where are your parents?" That wound never healed. It hardened. I started the engine and whispered to myself, "Let's make sure this one's unforgettable." That night, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by receipts and contracts. The ticking clock matched the rhythm of my heartbeat. My husband was asleep in the next room, unaware of what I was doing. I opened my laptop, logged into my account, and checked every vendor one by one. Venue, catering, florist, sound team, decorations, all under my authorization. Every deposit, every invoice. My name on every dotted line. It was almost poetic. They had trusted the one person they never respected. A small subplot unfolded right then. A text from the florist. "Hi Patricia, confirming final delivery schedule. Do we keep Saturday morning?" I stared at the screen for a moment before replying, "Yes, but I'll call if there's a change." Then another message from the sound technician. "Payment cleared. Want to finalize playlist." I typed back, "Hold on for updates. Bride might adjust timing." I stared at those words, "hold on," and realized how fitting they were. Everyone would soon be holding on. The next morning, I arrived at the church early to drop off new table linens. My father was already there, chatting with the pastor. He didn't notice me until I was almost beside him. "Patricia," he said, startled. "You should smile more. It's a happy time." "For some of us," I replied lightly. He frowned, then turned back to the pastor, pretending he didn't hear. Inside the hall, sunlight spilled across rows of chairs wrapped in silk bows. It looked beautiful, temporarily. I walked the aisle slowly, fingertips grazing each ribbon. Everything perfect, everything ready. I thought about how fragile that perfection was, how easily it could unravel with a single phone call. My mother entered just then, holding a clipboard. "We'll have reporters from the local magazine," she said proudly. "Emily's pictures might even make the cover." "That's wonderful," I said softly. She nodded, not catching the irony. You should thank her. She forgave you after everything." I turned to face her fully. "Forgave me? For what exactly?" Her voice wavered. "For the tension between you two. It's time to move on." I smiled. "I already have, Mom." She left before noticing the chill in my tone. By sunset, rehearsal dinner began at their house. Laughter filled every room, clinking glasses, the smell of roasted chicken. I sat quietly in the corner, observing. Emily opened a gift from my parents. A diamond bracelet. "Oh Mom, Dad, it's perfect," she squealed. They smiled proudly. My mother's eyes shimmered. Every good daughter deserves something special. My fork froze midair. Every good daughter. Emily caught my expression and leaned close. "Don't be jealous, Patty. You've had your chances." I looked at her calmly. "You're right. I did. And I used them." She laughed, thinking it was a joke. But I meant every word. When dinner ended, I helped clear the table. My father handed me a trash bag and said, "You've been surprisingly helpful. Let's keep it that way." I took the bag, smiling faintly. "Don't worry, Dad. I plan to." In the reflection of the kitchen window, I saw my own face lit by candlelight. Steady, unreadable, but not defeated. I thought of all the times I'd been told to lower my voice, hide my feelings, step aside for Emily. Each command had built this quiet, deliberate calm. I reached into my purse and touched the planner again, my secret weapon dressed as responsibility. Every signature, every date, every account was mine. They had no idea how close their perfect day stood to collapsing. And as laughter drifted from the living room, I whispered, "Let's see how perfect it is without me." That night I couldn't sleep. The moonlight spilled through my curtains, silver and cold. I sat at the edge of my bed, listening to the ticking clock, imagining their faces when the silence replaced the music, when the flowers never arrived, when the guests began whispering. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt certain. The next morning would look normal. Coffee brewing, birds singing, phone ringing. But beneath it all, Something had already shifted. My mother's whisper still echoed in my head. Don't draw attention this time. I smiled into the darkness. Don't worry, Mom, I murmured. I won't. Not until it's too late. And with that thought I closed my eyes, calm, composed and ready. That sentence followed me into morning like a ghost. The house was quiet except for the slow rhythm of the clock and the smell of freshly brewed coffee. Outside, the sky was pale, soft pink at the edges. My husband left early for work. He didn't ask what I'd be doing today. He'd learn not to. I set my cup on the table and opened my planner again. My secret map. Page after page of wedding details, every one leading back to me. The handwriting looked neat, but I could feel the power behind each line. Every vendor, every payment, every signature. All under my name. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. Revenge wasn't about grinning. It was about precision. By mid-morning I was at the church again. The air smelled faintly of cleaning polish and flowers that had arrived too early. The caretaker nodded as I passed, unaware that this place, this shining symbol of family unity, would soon host something very different. Emily and my mother were already inside, bickering over napkin colors. Lilac clashes with ivory, my mother sighed. Mom, no one even notices napkins. Emily snapped. Yes, they do, I said quietly from behind them. They notice everything at weddings. They turned, startled, as if I had materialized from nowhere. Patricia. Emily forced a bright smile. You scared me. Sorry, I said. Just here to finalize the music schedule. I held up my folder. A harmless gesture. She didn't know that folder also contained copies of every cancellation clause. The rest of the morning passed in fragments. Ribbon colors, seating charts, table placements. My mother's voice carried across the hall like a constant hum. She kept saying, everything must be perfect, as if repeating it would make it true. When she wasn't looking, I slipped away to the side room where the sound technician's equipment was stacked. I double-checked the name on the contract. Patricia Harris. All mine. As I touched the edge of the folder, a thrill ran through me. Not excitement. Control. Quiet, complete control. From outside the door I heard my sister's voice rising. Where's the delivery team? They should have been here by now. They're scheduled for noon, I called out smoothly. She exhaled, relieved. Good. Don't mess that up. I won't, I said, and I meant it. I'd never mess anything up. Not unless I wanted to. Around lunchtime I sat in my car outside the venue watching the vendors come and go. The florist's van pulled in, a cheerful man unloading crates of fresh white roses. I greeted him warmly, even helped carry a box inside. You're the sister, right? He asked, wiping his hands. Yes, I said. And the coordinator. Everything's under your name here. You've been easy to work with. Glad to hear that. I smiled, but inside I memorized his face, his tone, his trust. He handed me his card. Call me if you need anything changed. I might, I said softly. Thank you. Back inside, Emily was rehearsing her entrance again, practicing her walk with slow, perfect steps. I stood by the door, unnoticed, watching her reflection glide across the polished floor. She was beautiful, yes, but not because she earned it. She was beautiful because everyone decided she was. Patricia, she said suddenly, turning toward me. Mom said you'll handle the vendor calls tomorrow morning. You're okay with that? Of course, I said. Good. And, thanks. Her voice softened, almost genuine. For a second it almost touched me. Almost. Then she added, I know it's hard for you, watching everything come together like this after, well, you know, after my wedding. After they humiliated me by absence. Yes, I said quietly. It's hard. But I'll manage. Her smile returned, polished and hollow. That's the spirit. That evening at home I received 3 calls. The photographer confirming timing, the caterer requesting final payment, and the decorator asking about access hours. I handled them all efficiently. When the photographer said, payment through your account, correct? I replied, yes, all invoices go through me. I like to keep things organized. He chuckled. Wish every family had someone like you. I looked out the window at the fading daylight. You'd be surprised, I said. After the last call I sat back, feeling the weight of what I'd built. The power wasn't in the cancellations themselves. It was in knowing I could pull every string. I could stop the music, the food, the flowers, even the lights, and no one could do a thing without me. But I wasn't ready yet. No, not yet. The storm wasn't supposed to crash too early. It had to build quietly, beautifully, until the moment of ruin felt inevitable. The next morning brought another rehearsal, smaller this time, close family only. I wore a soft gray dress, simple but elegant. Emily greeted me with a quick hug as if she just remembered I was human. "Mom says you're handling the vendor confirmations tomorrow," she said cheerfully. "I am." "Perfect. You're finally being useful." Her words were playful but they cut. I hid it well. "I've always been useful," I replied. "Just not always appreciated." She laughed. "You sound like one of your mystery novels." "Lighten up, Patty." I wanted to tell her that some mysteries end with funerals, not laughter. But I stayed quiet because silence was my sharpest weapon. As everyone left the church that afternoon, I lingered behind. The hall was empty except for the faint echo of footsteps and the scent of roses. I sat on the front pew and ran my hand along the polished wood, feeling its smoothness. This place had witnessed countless promises, and countless lies. It would witness one more. I thought about my parents then, about how they used to introduce us to guests. "This is our eldest, Patricia, the quiet one, and this is Emily, our pride and joy." Quiet one. Pride and joy. Those labels had stuck like name tags I could never peel off. Now for once I'd decided to live up to my label. Quiet. Deadly quiet. Later that night my mother called. "Patricia, darling, I just wanted to say how proud we are of how you've handled everything. You're being so immature." "Mature?" I repeated. "That's new." "Yes, well, Emily's noticed. She says you've really changed." I smiled faintly. "She's right. I have." "Oh, sweetheart," my mother said warmly, "maybe after this wedding things can be different between all of us." I looked at the planner on my table, the names, the dates, the fragile structure they'd built their peace upon. "Yes," I said softly. "Things will be very different." That night I couldn't sleep again. I lay in the dark, listening to the rain tap against the window. I kept replaying their words in my mind. Mature, helpful, changed. They thought forgiveness looked like cooperation. They couldn't imagine that calm could mean calculation. My husband stirred beside me, half asleep. "You okay?" he murmured. "I'm fine," I said. "Just thinking about tomorrow." "Big day for your sister, huh?" "Yes," I whispered. "Bigger than she knows." The next morning came with bright sunlight and early phone calls. The decorator texted that they'd need confirmation by 8 a.m. for setup timing. I typed back, confirming soon. "Stand by." Then the caterer messaged, "We're prepped, just need your go-ahead." I replied, "Hold for final adjustments." Those two words, stand by, hold, became my quiet anthem. I could feel it now, the storm beneath the stillness. At noon, I visited my parents' house to deliver final seating charts. My mother fussed over lace napkins while my father checked wine labels. They looked happy, secure in the illusion that everything was under control. "Your sister's lucky to have you," my father said absently. "You've done more than enough." "I know," I said. "But I'm not done yet." He chuckled, misreading me completely. "That's my girl, always finishing what she starts." "Yes," I said softly. "Always." As I left, Emily called, her voice bright and fluttering. "Patty, just wanted to thank you for all this. I know I can be difficult sometimes." "You think so?" I teased. She laughed. "Okay, maybe most of the time. But seriously, I couldn't have done it without you." I looked out at the sunlight hitting the empty street. "That's the thing about me, Emily. You never could have done it without me." He paused, sensing something in my tone. "What do you mean?" "Nothing," I said quickly. "Just proud of you." "Aw, thanks, sis." Her relief was almost sweet. Almost. When I hung up, I caught my reflection in the car window. Calm, composed, unreadable. The wind rustled the trees above me, scattering petals from the neighbor's dogwood tree onto my windshield. Tiny, white, and weightless, like the calm before lightning strikes. I brushed one petal away and whispered, "Tomorrow they'll remember who I am." That promise echoed in my chest as dawn crept through my curtains. The sunlight was pale and unforgiving, stretching across the floorboards like quiet judgment. I sat up slowly, my hands steady, my breath even. There was no rush. The plan was already in motion. I didn't need chaos. I needed timing. I brewed a cup of coffee, strong and black, and opened my planner one last time. Every page was marked, highlighted, cross-referenced. The wedding schedule sat in the center, precise down to the minute. 9:30, flowers. 10 o'clock, catering. 10:45, sound check. 11:30, photography setup. And beside each, in my careful handwriting, one short word: cancel. I traced the first one with my fingertip. It didn't feel cruel. It felt inevitable. Outside, the world carried on in blissful ignorance. Birds sang, sprinklers hissed, and the air smelled faintly of spring rain. The kind of morning people called perfect. I dressed neatly, pale blue blouse, gray skirt, comfortable shoes. Nothing about me looked vengeful. I looked like someone on her way to help, the dutiful sister, the reliable daughter. That was the disguise they'd built for me, and today it would serve me well. At exactly 8:12 a.m. I sat at my kitchen table, phone in hand. My fingers didn't tremble as I made the first call. "Good morning, is this Rose Valley Florals?" A cheerful voice answered. "Yes. We're already prepping for the Harris wedding." I interrupted, calm and professional. "This is Patricia Harris, the event coordinator. Unfortunately, there's been a family emergency. We'll need to cancel delivery for today." "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Should we hold the order?" "No," I said firmly. "Please process a refund. I'll send an email confirmation shortly." "Understood. We'll cancel immediately." I hung up, took a sip of coffee, and checked the box beside flowers. One down. The second call was easier. The catering company. "Morning, Patricia," the man greeted brightly. "We're all packed and ready to roll." "There's been a change," I said evenly. "Events postponed. Please stop preparation and hold delivery." There was a pause. "Postponed? Today's the wedding, right?" I softened my tone. "Not anymore." By the time I ended that call, the smell of roasted chicken they'd been preparing was probably already fading from their kitchen. I felt nothing, not guilt, not thrill. Just quiet control. When I looked up from my planner, the clock read 8:46. Still ahead of schedule. At 9:15, the sound technician called me. "Hey Patricia, just confirming setup time. We'll arrive by 10. "No need," I replied. "The event's been rescheduled." "What? Rescheduled?" "I was told." "I know," I said smoothly. "Family matters. I'll be in touch next week." His confusion crackled through the line, but I was already writing sound. Cancelled. I set the phone down and exhaled. My hands were steady, but my pulse wasn't. I could feel it in my wrists, a soft flutter, not from fear but from power. For years my family taught me to stay small, quiet, obedient. Now I was silent again, but this time the silence belonged to me. By 10 the house felt too still. My husband had texted to ask how things were going. I didn't reply. What could I say? Fine, love. Just dismantling my sister's fairy tale. Instead I went to the window. Outside the sky had clouded over. The day was turning gray, the kind of dull light that made everything look honest. I liked that. A car honked somewhere down the street. Probably a vendor trying to find the venue that no longer had a reason to exist. At 10:30 my phone buzzed with the first call from Emily. I let it ring. Then a second. Then a third. Finally I answered. "Patty, where are you?" "The flowers aren't here, the caterer's not picking up, and Mom's losing her mind." "Breathe, Emily," I said softly. "I'll check on it." "Check on it? You're supposed to handle it." "I am handling it," I replied. Her voice cracked. "Don't mess this up for me." "I wouldn't dream of it," I said and hung up. The phone buzzed again immediately, but I silenced it. I didn't block her. Not yet. I wanted her to feel the weight of uncertainty first. At 11 o'clock I drove to the venue. The roads were slick from light rain, puddles collecting in shallow dips. When I arrived, I parked a block away and watched from the car. Guests were arriving, dressed in pastel colors, smiling under umbrellas. They looked so happy, so expectant. I could almost taste their confusion when the truth would hit. The parking lot attendants were chatting idly, waiting for vendors who would never come. I rolled down the window, letting the sound of distant laughter drift in. It didn't bother me. It reminded me of how fragile it all was, the illusion of perfection. I stayed there watching until my phone buzzed again, my mother this time. "Patricia," she shouted the moment I answered. What's happening? The florist says you canceled everything. Yes, I said simply. Her voice dropped to a whisper. What do you mean yes? I mean I canceled them. There was a sharp inhale, then silence. I could hear my father in the background demanding answers. Why would you do that? My mother finally asked, trembling. Because, I said slowly, you asked me to stay quiet. And I did. I ended the call before she could reply. For a moment I sat still, letting the calm return. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked older than it had yesterday. Not weaker, just heavier. Like someone finally carrying her own truth instead of everyone else's. At 11:45 I stepped out of the car and walked toward the church. My heels clicked softly against the wet pavement. The air smelled of rain and panic. Through the doors I could hear muffled voices. My mother's sharp tone, Emily's rising hysteria, guests whispering. I didn't rush. I wanted to arrive into their chaos like the calm in its center. When I entered, every head turned. My father was pacing near the front, phone in hand. Emily stood in her wedding dress, pale and furious, mascara streaking her cheeks. There she is, my mother cried. Patricia, fix this. I looked around at the bare tables, the empty altar, the unlit candles. The silence was beautiful. Fix what? I asked. Emily stormed toward me. You canceled everything. The florist, the food, the music. What's wrong with you? Nothing, I said. Everything's just quieter this way. My father's voice thundered. You've humiliated this family. I met his eyes calmly. I learned from the best. A hush spread across the room. Guests pretended not to stare but couldn't look away. I could see pity flickering in their eyes. Not for me but for the collapse of the perfect picture they'd been promised. Emily was trembling now, her voice breaking. Why, Patty? What did I ever do to you? I smiled faintly. You wouldn't understand. You never had to. She reached out, her hand brushing mine. You can still fix it. Please. Call them back. I gently pulled my hand away. I could, I said. But I won't. Her lips parted but no words came out. Behind her, my mother began to cry softly, not from heartbreak but from embarrassment. That sound was worse than shouting. It was the sound of reputation cracking. I turned toward the open doors, the cold air brushing against my face. I'll leave you to it, I said quietly. Don't you dare walk out, my father shouted. I stopped. For the first time in my life his voice didn't scare me. I looked back at them, my mother clutching her pearls, my sister frozen in silk, my father red with fury. You wanted peace, I said. Now you have it. Then I walked out. Outside the rain had started again, soft and cleansing. Guests were already whispering, their umbrellas blooming like dark flowers. I stood under the gray sky, breathing in the damp air. Somewhere behind me I heard my name shouted again and again, but I didn't turn back. In the distance the bells began to ring. Automatic, mechanical, indifferent. The perfect wedding was beginning without its soul. I watched a single petal fall from my hair and land in a puddle. It floated for a moment before sinking. That was Emily's day now, sinking, silent, swallowed by her own perfection. I drove away slowly, watching the church disappear in the rearview mirror. My phone buzzed once more, a message from my mother. What have you done? I didn't reply, because she already knew. That thought echoed in my mind as I turned off the ignition and sat in silence. The car engine ticked softly beneath the rain, cooling like the aftermath of a long hidden fire. My hands rested on the steering wheel, still, firm, no longer trembling. I could see my reflection faintly in the rearview mirror, my hair damp from the mist, my eyes clear. For once I didn't look like the difficult daughter. I looked like a woman who had finally stopped apologizing. I thought about leaving it at that, letting the day collapse on its own. But something inside me, that quiet ache built from years of being unseen, whispered, they need to face you now. So I started the car again and turned back toward the church. By the time I arrived, the chaos had ripened. Guests were huddled beneath umbrellas. Some had already driven away. The parking lot was littered with petals and discarded programs. Through the open doors I could see my mother's back, rigid, trembling slightly as she spoke to someone. My father stood beside her, trying to keep his composure. Emily was still in her gown, makeup streaked down her face, her fiancé pacing nearby, phone pressed to his ear. I walked in quietly. Nobody noticed me at first. The room smelled of wilted flowers and cold air. The silence between their raised voices was heavy, that kind of silence that made people whisper something went terribly wrong. My father turned first. His expression twisted, half disbelief, half fury. "You came back," he said, voice low. I nodded. Of course. I wanted to see how things turned out. My mother's hand flew to her chest. "Patricia, how could you do this? Your sister's entire future was built on everyone else cleaning up after her," I interrupted softly. Her mouth fell open. "This isn't you. You've always been the sensible one." I said, until being sensible only served everyone but me. Emily stepped forward then, her eyes wild. "You ruined my wedding." I tilted my head. "Did I? Or did I just stop pretending to hold it together for you?" Her fiancé, a tall man with a pinched face, glared at me. "Do you have any idea what this looks like to our guests?" I met his stare. "Yes. It looks like truth." He muttered something under his breath and stormed off, phone still to his ear. Emily's voice broke as she called after him, "Ryan, don't leave." But he didn't stop. The sound of the church door slamming behind him was like punctuation, sharp and final. No one spoke for several seconds. The air inside the hall felt thick. My father moved closer to me, jaw tight. "Apologize," he said. "Yow. For what?" "For humiliating us." I took a deep breath and looked him dead in the eye. "You did that years ago when you left my wedding chairs empty." My mother gasped. "That was different." "Was it?" I asked. "Pain doesn't come in different shapes, Mom. It just waits, until someone decides it's time to return it." She sank into a chair, covering her face. For a moment I almost felt pity. Almost. But pity was the first thing they taught me to suppress. Emily's voice rose behind me. "You've always been jealous." "Maybe," I said calmly. "But you know what jealousy looks like? It looks like planning your own wedding while being told you don't deserve one." Her lip trembled. "You think this makes you strong? You look pathetic." "Strong?" I smiled faintly. "No. Just visible." Her eyes flickered, confusion, maybe even recognition, then rage again. "I'll never forgive you." "I'm not asking you to," I replied. "You'd have to see me first to forgive me." A guest wandered in then, clearly unaware of the storm they were stepping into. "Are we still having the ceremony?" they asked awkwardly. My father straightened immediately. "Yes, of course. Just a small delay." I turned to him slowly. "Still trying to protect the image even now?" He glared. "You don't understand how this family works." "No," I said. "I understand it too well. It only works if one person stays invisible." He exhaled sharply, his voice rising. "You think you've proven something by doing this? You've only shown how selfish you are." I felt a calmness settle in my chest, heavy but liberating. If refusing to be invisible is selfish, then I'll wear that proudly. Emily had sunk to the floor, holding her bouquet like it might hold her together. My mother was whispering to a group of relatives, her voice trembling, her face pale. The choir members had left. The photographer packed up quietly and slipped out through the side door. The smell of rain mixed with perfume and panic. I stood there, absorbing the sight of the destruction, not chaos but truth laid bare. For once I wasn't on the outside of it. I was the eye of the storm. A familiar voice startled me. "Patricia." I turned. It was Mrs. Doyle, our old neighbor, one of the few who had attended my wedding years ago. Her face was kind but cautious. "Dear, what happened?" she asked softly. I gave her a tired smile. "Nothing new. I just stopped pretending." Her brows furrowed. "Your mother's in shock. She says you've ruined your sister's reputation." I met her eyes. Maybe that's the first honest reputation Emily's ever had. Mrs. Doyle looked at me for a long time and then, to my surprise, she nodded. "Sometimes it takes a quiet person to make noise." Her words lingered even after she walked away. I moved closer to the altar where the lace runner had been laid out. It was damp now, stained by muddy footprints and tears. I traced its edge with my fingertips, remembering how I used to help my mother iron those cloths for Sunday service. She always said, "Wrinkles show carelessness." Now the whole room was wrinkled, messy, imperfect, human. My mother's sobs broke the silence again. "Why would you destroy something beautiful?" I turned to her gently. Because beauty built on silence doesn't last. You raised me to serve someone else's happiness. Today I returned what was never mine. She looked up, eyes red. I never meant to hurt you. Maybe not, I said. But you still did. For a moment her expression softened. Regret, maybe realization. Then she looked away, muttering, "You could have talked to us." I did, I said. You just never listened. The organist, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, stood up and started to pack his sheet music. My father barked at him, "Don't you dare leave." The man hesitated. I stepped forward. "Go ahead," I said kindly. "You've already played your part." He nodded gratefully and left. My mother rose slowly, her composure cracking. "We'll fix this," she whispered to my father. "We'll find new vendors, push the ceremony a few hours." "There's no one left to call," I said softly. I made sure of that. Her head snapped toward me, panic in her eyes. You planned this?" I didn't answer, just looked at her, long enough for understanding to settle in. She backed away a step, whispering, "You've turned into someone I don't know." "No," I said quietly. "I've turned into someone you finally see." The sky outside darkened. Thunder rumbled faintly in the distance. The candles flickered on the altar, one going out completely. Emily stood now, trembling, holding her phone. "Ryan won't answer," she said in a small voice. "He left." No one responded. My father looked away. My mother's lips pressed thin. I stepped closer to her. "You'll be fine," I said gently. "You always land on your feet." She looked up at me, eyes glassy. "I don't even know what to tell people." "Try the truth," I said. "For once." Her face hardened again. "You're enjoying this." I shook my head. "No. I'm surviving it." Minutes passed like slow drops of rain. People began to leave quietly, pretending not to stare. Every door that closed behind them sounded like a verdict. Soon it was just the four of us, my parents, Emily, and me. The family tableau no camera would ever capture. My father's voice broke the stillness. "You wanted revenge. You got it. Are you satisfied now?" I looked at him for a long time. "Not yet." He frowned. "Then what do you want?" "To be remembered," I said. "Not as the quiet one. As the one who finally spoke without words." He shook his head, disgusted. "You've disgraced us." I met his eyes one last time. "No, Dad. I exposed us." Outside, the rain began again, heavier this time, pounding against the stained glass windows. The colors shifted on the floor, reds, greens, and blues mixing like spilled secrets. My mother whispered something to Emily, then turned to me. "You've made your point, Patricia. Now stop before you destroy everything." I walked toward her slowly, calm as ever. "Everything," I said softly. "Mom, that was destroyed years ago. You just didn't notice." And with that I picked up the bouquet that had fallen from Emily's hands, crushed, missing petals, stems bent, and set it gently on the altar. Then I looked at them all, the family who had never seen me until today, and said, "Now you finally can." The words hung in the air like smoke, faint but impossible to ignore. For a long moment no one spoke. The rain outside filled the silence, steady and relentless. My father stood frozen, staring at the bouquet I'd set on the altar. My mother's lips trembled as if she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. Emily just stared at me, eyes glassy and unfocused, her mascara like bruises under her lashes. I felt no need to move, no need to explain. The power wasn't in noise anymore. It was in quiet. The kind of quiet they'd forced on me for years now finally turned against them. The candles on the altar flickered. One by one the flames began to die, leaving soft curls of smoke that twisted upward like ghosts. The air smelled faintly of wax and rain-soaked flowers. Emily broke first. "You ruined me," she whispered. Her voice was small, almost childlike. "Ryan's gone. The guests are gone. My life's different," I said softly. "Not ruined. Just honest." She blinked, confusion flickering through her eyes. "Honest. You built your life on being adored," I said. "Now you'll learn how it feels to be seen without the pedestal." She stepped closer, her dress dragging across the wet floor. "I loved you, Patty. You were my sister." "Were," I repeated quietly. "Past tense suits us." Her face crumpled, but I didn't reach for her. I'd done enough reaching in this family. All it ever earned me was emptiness. My father moved toward me then, slow and deliberate. You think this is justice? He asked, his voice deep, dangerous. I didn't flinch. I think it's balance. You embarrassed your mother. You shamed this family. I met his stare. You mean I told the truth in public? His jaw tightened. We did what we had to. You were always too emotional, too proud. Too alive, I corrected. And you hated that it didn't look like her version of perfect. He took another step, anger flaring in his eyes. You're cruel. I learned from watching you. The words hit him like a slap. For the first time my father had nothing to say. He turned away, his hands trembling. My mother tried next, her tone soft, pleading. We were wrong, Patricia. We should have treated you better. But this is too far. I sighed. You don't get to decide how far is too far. You crossed that line the day you skipped my wedding and called it dignity. Her voice cracked. I was ashamed. I nodded slowly. I know. I just finally gave you something new to be ashamed of. She pressed a hand to her chest, eyes glistening. You've become cold. No, I said. I've become quiet. There's a difference. She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. That more than anything told me she understood, even if she'd never admit it out loud. Outside, the thunder rolled closer, shaking the stained glass in its frame. A flash of lightning washed the room in white for half a second, stark, unflattering truth. I walked slowly toward the pews where my family sat scattered, their perfect world dismantled before them. I spoke not as the daughter who once begged for love, but as the woman who finally stopped asking. You spent your whole lives teaching me that silence was the proper way to exist, I said. Smile, nod, agree, disappear. And I did, until I realized silence isn't peace. It's punishment. My mother whispered, You've punished us enough. I shook my head gently. No, Mom. You've just started hearing it. Emily stood again, trembling. Do you want everyone to hate me? I don't care who hates you, I said softly. I care that you see me. She swallowed hard. I see you now. Do you? I asked. Or do you just see what I can take from you? Her tears fell freely then. What do you want me to say? The truth, I said. Say you're not perfect. Say you built your happiness on someone else's silence. She looked down. For the first time her voice lost its practiced calm. I used you. I knew they'd never say no to me. I knew you'd always fix everything. I nodded once. You're finally honest. The clock in the church tower began to chime noon, 12 deep, echoing bells. Each one seemed to erase a piece of the illusion that had held this family together. When the last tone faded, I walked toward the doors. I could feel their eyes following me, but no one called my name. Not this time. I paused at the threshold and turned back. You asked me to stay quiet for her reputation, I said. Now that silence belongs to you. Live in it. Feel it. Let it follow you the way mine followed me. My father's voice broke the stillness, rough and bitter. You'll regret this. I smiled faintly. I already did. For years. Then I stepped outside. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. The air smelled like wet grass and fading perfume. The church behind me hummed with muffled chaos, a sound that grew fainter with each step I took. At the edge of the parking lot, Mrs. Doyle stood beneath her umbrella, waiting. Leaving already? She asked softly. Yes, I said. There's nothing left for me inside. She nodded, her eyes kind. They'll talk, you know. They always did, I said. Now they'll just have to tell the truth. She hesitated. You did what most people never have the courage to do. Maybe, I said, looking up at the gray sky. Or maybe I just stopped being afraid of being alone. She smiled faintly. Sometimes that's the same thing. I drove home in silence. The windshield wipers kept rhythm with my thoughts. Every passing mile felt lighter, cleaner. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel triumph. Just peace. A peace that didn't require anyone else's permission. When I reached the house, I took off my shoes at the door and walked barefoot across the cool floor. The air inside smelled like coffee and rain, the same scent that had started the morning. On the kitchen table sat my planner, still open. The word cancel stared up at me in clean black ink. I smiled and closed it. There was nothing left to cancel. By evening the phone began to buzz again. First my mother, then Emily, then numbers I didn't recognize. I let them all go to voicemail. Finally, I turned the phone off and set it face down. The quiet that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was mine. I made myself a small dinner, toast and tea, and ate by the window as the sun sank behind the clouds. The world outside looked washed, softer somehow. The kind of calm that comes after a storm when everything is finally honest again. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something. Forgiveness, validation, understanding. I had already given myself all three. As darkness settled, I lit a candle on the table. Its flame danced gently, steady but alive. I thought about my mother's trembling hands, my father's silence, Emily's tears. All the noise they had thrown at me to keep me small. Now that noise was gone. And in its place was stillness. A silence so complete that it didn't hurt anymore. I whispered into it just to hear how it sounded. This is what peace feels like. The next morning I walked through town for the first time in weeks. People looked at me differently now. Curious, cautious, whispering behind hands. I didn't mind. Their stares couldn't touch me anymore. When I passed the florist shop, the same man who'd once praised my organization stepped outside. "Rough day yesterday?" he asked kindly. I smiled. "A necessary one." He chuckled softly, not understanding, and went back inside. I kept walking, the sun warming my face. Days turned into weeks. The whispers faded. Emily never called again. My mother sent one letter, long, apologetic, full of excuses. I never opened it. I didn't need to. Some nights, when the wind blew through the house and rattled the windows, I thought of the church. The broken bouquet, the stained glass light. And instead of guilt, I felt something purer, relief. Because revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about reclaiming the space where you'd been erased. Months later, I found myself driving past the church again. The grass had grown over the walkway. The sign out front announced another couple's ceremony. I parked for a moment, watching as laughter spilled out through the doors. It didn't sting this time. It just reminded me that some stories end quietly. Not with forgiveness, not with reunion, but with freedom. I rolled down the window, felt the wind on my face, and whispered, "You wanted me to stay quiet." I did. But now you can't escape it. And for the first time in my life, my silence didn't belong to them. It belonged to me. Sometimes silence is the loudest revenge. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and join me tomorrow for another tale of truth, betrayal, and quiet justice.